Welcome back to Hidden Truths, True Stories. Before we begin tonight's story, I want to welcome all new listeners joining us in this quiet hour. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss what comes next. All right, let's begin. My name is Daniel Hart, and this is a truth I've kept buried for years. It was a cold November night, the kind that makes the whole city feel like it's holding its breath. I was sitting alone on my balcony, letting the wind numb the noise in my head, when my phone rang with a name I hadn't seen in months, my younger brother, Miles. He never called me this late. Hell, he never called me at all unless something was wrong. When I answered, all I heard was shaky breathing and a whisper that didn't sound like him. "Danny, they're coming for me." At first, I thought he was drunk or messing around, but then I heard something crash in the background, followed by footsteps, fast, purposeful, like someone was hunting him inside his own house. "Miles, talk to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who's there? What's going on?" But he kept repeating the same thing, like a broken record stuck in fear. "I didn't do it, Danny. I swear I didn't do it." My pulse shot through my chest. Miles had always been the quiet one, the stubborn one, the kind of guy who'd rather swallow pain than ask for help. Hearing him like this felt wrong, dangerous. Even before I could calm him down, the line went dead. Just a sharp click, then silence. And in that silence, man, I felt something heavy settle in my gut, something I hadn't felt since the night our father died. Fear mixed with certainty. Something terrible had happened. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car without a jacket, without thinking, just moving on instinct. As I drove across the city, the streets felt darker than usual, like the shadows were watching me, whispering a warning I didn't want to hear. I tried calling him back, but it went straight to voicemail. The last time I'd spoken to Miles before tonight, we'd argued. He told me he'd uncovered something inside the department, a trail of money, falsified reports, officers working off the record for a private client. I told him to leave it alone. I told him some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. But Miles, he was stubborn, too brave or too naive for his own good. Now, as I turned onto the street, I saw two things at the same time. His house completely dark, except for a single light flickering in the living room, and a black SUV parked across the road with its engine still running. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a bad night. This was the beginning of something much, much bigger. I killed the engine a block before reaching Miles's house, letting the cold air creep through the cracked window as I tried to steady my breathing. Something about that black SUV felt wrong, too still, too deliberate, like a predator pretending to sleep. I watched it from the shadows, counting the seconds between its subtle engine rumbles. Someone was inside, waiting. I slipped out of my car quietly and moved along the sidewalk, keeping low behind the fences and overgrown hedges that lined the neighborhood. The streetlights flickered in that weird, uneven rhythm, painting the road in slow pulses of gold and shadow. When I got close enough to see the SUV clearly, I noticed the windows were tinted darker than legal, and the front tires were still warm. Someone had arrived only moments before me, and whoever it was didn't ring the doorbell like a normal visitor. My heart thudded in my chest as I turned my eyes toward Miles's house. The door was slightly open, not broken, not kicked, just ajar, like someone had walked in confidently, expecting no resistance. I wanted to run in, yell his name, flip every light on, but something told me to be quiet, to move like every sound could set off an alarm I couldn't see. So I stepped inside slowly, pushing the door just enough to slip through. The smell hit me first, a mix of cold air, dust, and something metallic that made the hairs on my neck stand up. The lamp in the corner flickered, throwing this sickly yellow glow across the room. And then I saw it, the overturned chair, the shattered glass across the floor, Miles's notebook lying open like he'd been writing something right before everything fell apart. "Miles!" I whispered, my voice barely escaping my throat. No answer, not even movement. The house felt frozen, caught in the moment right after a storm. I moved deeper inside, stepping over the broken glass, scanning every corner. His phone lay on the carpet. The screen cracked, still glowing faintly with the last call he made. To me, my stomach tightened. Something had gone down here, and it wasn't a simple break-in. Miles didn't fight often, but when he did, he wasn't the type to leave a scene this quiet. I knelt beside the notebook, feeling the weight of the cold floor against my knees. He'd written 2 words, big ones, scratched hastily across the page. They know. Behind me, the floor creaked. Not from me, not from the wind. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Someone else was in the house. I didn't turn right away. I just closed the notebook and stood up slowly, every muscle in my body tightening. And before I even faced the doorway, I felt in the air. I wasn't alone, and whoever had just stepped into the room hadn't come to help me find my brother. I didn't turn around right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch, feeling the air shift behind me. Heavier, colder, like someone had stepped out of the darkness carrying their own shadow. My breath slowed as I glanced at the reflection in the cracked TV screen across the room. A figure stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothes that swallowed whatever light dared to touch him. I couldn't see his face, but I could see the outline of a holster under his jacket. Definitely not a random intruder. "You shouldn't be here, Danny," the man said, his voice low and almost calm, like he was delivering bad news he'd practiced 100 times. My blood ran cold. He knew my name, my full name. That meant this wasn't a burglary, and it sure as hell wasn't an accident. I finally turned around, keeping my hands loose at my sides, like I wasn't 2 seconds away from lunging for the nearest heavy object. "Who are you?" I asked, even though a part of me felt like I already knew the answer. Guys like him didn't come with friendly intentions. He didn't answer right away. He stepped deeper into the room, his boots making soft thuds on the hardwood floor. "You should have stayed out of it," he said quietly. "Your brother didn't listen either." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Where is he?" I demanded. "What did you do to him?" He tilted his head slightly, almost curious, like he was studying me. "He opened a door he shouldn't have opened. And once you see what's on the other side," his hand brushed the inside of his jacket, resting near the holster. "There's no going back." Fear twisted into anger inside me, sharp and hot. I took a step forward, jaw tight. I'm not leaving without him. The man sighed like he was disappointed. It's too late for choices. Before I could move again, a soft vibration came from my pocket. My phone, lighting up with a blocked number. The man's eyes flicked to it, and something in his expression changed, like that call wasn't part of the plan. "Don't answer that," he said, voice suddenly sharp. Which, of course, meant I answered immediately. I hit the screen and raised the phone. A distorted voice whispered through the speaker. Static, faint breathing, and then, "Danny, don't trust him." My legs almost gave out. That was Miles. Faint, weak, but alive. "Miles! Where are you?" I yelled. The man lunged forward, reaching for the phone, but I stepped back fast, my hand tightening around it. "Miles! Talk to me." But the voice faded, swallowed by static. Then the line cut to dead silence again. My hand shook as I lowered the phone, eyes locking on the man in front of me, his jaw clenched, the calmness slipping for the first time. "You weren't supposed to hear that," he muttered. I didn't wait for him to finish. I grabbed the nearest lamp and swung it hard, shattering it across his arm as he reached for his gun. He stumbled back, just enough for me to bolt through the side door into the cold night. As I hit the yard, adrenaline roaring through me, one thing echoed in my mind louder than the pounding of my steps. Miles was alive, and someone was trying damn hard to make sure I never found him. I sprinted across the yard, the freezing wind slapping my face as I vaulted over the fence into the neighbor's driveway. My lungs burned, but adrenaline kept my legs moving like they weren't even mine. Behind me, I heard the back door of Miles's house slam open and heavy boots pounding across the wooden steps. The man was fast, too fast, and the calm, controlled way he moved told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't some hired thug. He was trained. Military? Police? Someone who knew exactly how to chase, corner, and break a man. I ducked behind a parked truck, pressing my back against the cold metal as his footsteps approached the fence I'd just climbed. I held my breath, trying to stay silent, but my heart hammered so loudly I swore it echoed off the houses. "Danny," the man called out, his voice steady, unbothered by the cold or the chase. "You're wasting time. Every second you run, he loses another." He met Miles. He was taunting me, pulling at the panic he knew was eating me alive. I clenched my jaw and peeked under the truck, just enough to see his boots land on the other side of the fence. Black tactical boots, worn but polished. He paused, scanning the yard like a wolf catching a scent. Then he walked slowly toward the truck. I had seconds, maybe less. My eyes darted around the driveway until I spotted a gravel patch by the tires. I grabbed a handful and hurled it toward the opposite end of the yard. The pebbles hit the wooden fence with a sharp clatter. The man pivoted instantly. Trained reflexes. He moved toward the sound, gun now drawn. That was my moment. I slid out from under the truck, bolted to the side gate, and stumbled onto the street, legs shaking. My car was too far. The SUV was too dangerous. So I ran, down the sidewalk, across the intersection, past dark houses with curtains drawn tight. No one opened a door. No one looked outside. The whole neighborhood felt swallowed in quiet, like the world had turned its back on me. After several blocks, I ducked into an alley behind a closed bakery, gripping my knees as I tried to catch my breath. My hands trembled uncontrollably, not from exhaustion, but from the call. Miles was alive. Hurt, terrified, but alive. And that man, whoever he was, had slipped up by letting me hear it. I pulled out my phone, staring at the fractured screen. No signal. The battery icon blinked red. I moved deeper into the alley, searching for a spot where the reception might bounce back. That's when I noticed something else. Red and blue reflections rippling against the wall. For a split second, I thought it was patrol cars, and a strange relief washed through me. But when I peeked around the corner, my stomach dropped. 2 black sedans, not police cruisers, rolled slowly down the cross street, their tinted windows impossible to see through. One of them matched the SUV I'd seen earlier. They weren't searching the street. They were searching for me. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a couple of men trying to silence Miles. This was organized, coordinated. Someone had resources, manpower, and the confidence to move through the city like they owned it. And they wanted me gone before sunrise. I backed deeper into the alley, gripping the cold brick wall. I didn't know who these people were or what my brother had uncovered, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever Miles found, whatever he knew, it was big enough for dangerous men to hunt both of us in the dead of night. The cold brick scraped against my back as I pressed myself deeper into the alley, trying to melt into the shadows while those black sedans crept down the cross street like predators sniffing for wounded prey. I didn't dare breathe too loud. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but running blindly would just get me cornered faster. I waited, listening to the hum of their engines vibrating through the alley floor, watching the blue and red reflections flicker across the wet concrete like distant lightning. As the cars rolled past, slow and deliberate, I could almost feel their attention sweeping the darkness, searching for a shape that didn't belong. When they finally turned the corner and disappeared, I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My phone buzzed faintly in my hand, one last flicker of life before the battery died completely. A single bar of service flashed on and off like a dying heartbeat. I swallowed hard and dialed the only person I could trust at this hour, Officer Rory Hale. We weren't close friends anymore. Not since I left the department after my father's death, but he was still the one man who hadn't sold his soul to politics or ambition. The line rang once, twice, then cut to voicemail. "Rory, it's me," I whispered, voice tight. "I don't have time to explain. Someone took Miles. I'm being followed. If you get this, don't call back. Just text me from the burner phone you keep in your desk." I hung up quickly, praying he'd hear it before morning. A gust of wind swept through the alley, carrying the smell of engine fumes and wet asphalt. That's when I noticed something new. Footsteps, light, quick, and close. Not the heavy, confident steps of the man from Miles's house. These were smaller, almost nervous. I tensed, ready to grab the nearest piece of metal. But then a silhouette emerged near the dumpster at the front of the alley. A young woman, maybe late 20s, dark jacket, beanie pulled low, raising her hand slowly like she was approaching a wild animal. "Don't yell," she whispered urgently. "I'm here to help you." My jaw tightened. "Who are you?" She looked around the alley before stepping closer, her voice cracking from nerves. "My name is Lila. I work with your brother." My pulse spiked. Miles never mentioned anyone he trusted. He barely mentioned anything at all. "You're lying," I said, stepping back. "Miles doesn't take partners." She shook her head fiercely. "He didn't, not until last month. Not until he found something he wasn't supposed to. And now you're both on their list." My skin went cold. "Whose list?" Lila swallowed, eyes darting toward the street like she expected those sedans to reappear any second. "The ones who own the department. The ones pulling strings behind every case that disappears. The ones your father tried to expose before he died." Her voice trembled. "And now they want to finish what they started." My breath froze in my chest. My father. My brother. Now me. Something deep inside me shifted. Fear turning slowly into anger. "Where is Miles?" I demanded. Her eyes softened with something like guilt. "Alive," she whispered. "But not for long if we don't move now." She reached out a shaky hand. "Come with me, Danny. They'll be back any second." I stared at her, torn between doubt and desperation, between fear and the faint hope she might be telling the truth. The night around us seemed to tighten, closing in, and somewhere far off, the engines of those black sedans rumbled back to life, coming closer. For a moment I just stood there, staring at Lila's outstretched hand like it was some kind of trap disguised as hope. The alley felt too quiet, too narrow, like the whole city was holding its breath waiting to see what I'd do next. I didn't trust her, not fully, but I also didn't have the luxury of standing still while men with unlimited resources swept to the streets hunting me like I was a problem they were already tired of dealing with. A low rumble echoed off the buildings, the engines of those sedans growing louder as they looped back toward us. Lila heard it too. Her eyes widened as she gestured urgently toward the opposite end of the alley. "We don't have time," she whispered. "Please." Something in her voice cracked. Not rehearsed fear, but real, terrified humanity. And even though every alarm in my body screamed danger, something else whispered back. Miles trusted her. Or at least, he trusted her enough to let her get close. I grabbed her hand, and she immediately pulled me toward a metal door halfway down the alley. She fumbled with a set of keys, hands trembling, until one finally clicked. The door swung open into a dim staircase leading underground. "Move," she said, pushing me ahead. I took the steps two at a time as she locked the door behind us. The thud of it shutting echoed through the tight concrete stairwell. "What is this place?" I asked, panting. "A maintenance corridor," she replied. "Runs beneath 4 blocks of the old district. They don't monitor it because the city never finished mapping the lines down here." I almost laughed. "So we're hiding in a forgotten basement?" "We're surviving in one," she corrected. At the bottom of the stairs, she flicked on a small flashlight, illuminating a long, narrow tunnel lined with pipes and rusted utility boxes. The air smelled like old metal and damp stone. She walked ahead, fast and focused, her boots echoing softly in the hollow corridor. "How did you know where I was?" I asked. "Miles told me to track your phone," she answered without looking back. Before they got to him, he managed to send one last beacon from his encrypted app. "Beacon?" She nodded. "A dead man signal. It activates when he thinks he's not making it out." My stomach twisted. He wasn't supposed to use it unless he believed someone was going to disappear him, she finished quietly. The tunnel opened into a small service chamber with an old control panel buzzing faintly. Lila stopped, leaning against the wall, breathing hard. "Danny, listen to me carefully. Your brother uncovered something bigger than corruption, bigger than money laundering. This is systemic. It goes up past the department, past the city." Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear in them. Not fear being caught, but fear of the truth itself. Miles found a network, off-books units, operators with no official ties. They move people, evidence, Bodies. Whatever gets in the way. My throat tightened. Why tell me? Why risk yourself? She hesitated. Because your brother saved my life once. And he told me if anything happened to him, you're the only one who would fight back instead of running. The weight of her words hit me hard. Above us, faint but unmistakable, the muffled sound of boots and engines echoed through the street. They were searching every inch. Lila stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. They won't stop, Danny. Not until you're gone and he's forgotten. I clenched my fists, feeling anger burn to fear. Then show me where they took him, I said, and we end this tonight. Lila exhaled slowly, nodding. Then follow me. But once we go deeper, there's no turning back. Lila led me deeper into the maintenance corridors, the faint beam of her flashlight slicing through the thick darkness as we walked. The air grew colder the farther we went, like the city's warmth couldn't reach this forgotten place. Pipes rattled overhead with every passing truck or car above us, sending vibrations through the concrete floor. I stayed close behind her, listening to every sound, every distant echo, half expecting that man from Miles's house to peer out of the shadows at any second. Keep your steps light, she whispered. Sound travels strangely down here. I nodded, though my heartbeat felt loud enough to give us away. After what felt like 10 minutes of silent walking, the tunnel curved sharply, opening into a larger chamber lined with old electrical cabinets and water meters covered in dust. In the corner stood a rusted metal door with a faded warning sign, "Authorized personnel only." "In here," Lila said, slipping the key into a lock so old it groaned when she turned it. When the door swung open, a stronger draft hit us, colder, more sterile, like we were stepping into a place not meant for people. Inside was a narrow hallway that didn't match the old construction at all. Newer concrete, fresh wiring, LED motion lights that flickered to life as we entered. "This isn't city property," I muttered under my breath. "No," she replied softly. "It's theirs." A chill crawled up my spine. These people had built their own hidden passage inside the city's forgotten infrastructure. This wasn't corruption. This was architecture. Lila moved ahead quickly, checking corners like she'd done it before. "Miles found this route 2 weeks ago. He told me it connects to their holding site, a temporary one, used when they need to move someone without anyone noticing." My stomach twisted. Holding site. She nodded grimly. A place where people disappear before being moved again. That word, disappear, echoed in my mind like a ghost. We reached another door, this one reinforced, clean, steel gray, the kind you'd see in high-security labs. No handle, just a keypad. Lila pulled a small device from her jacket pocket, clipped 2 wires onto the keypad, and pressed a button. "Miles taught you that?" I asked quietly. "He saved my life," she repeated, her voice barely above a breath. "He taught me everything after that." The keypad beeped twice, then clicked. The door unlocked with a hiss. My pulse hammered. Beyond the door was a long corridor lined with grated floors and white fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly, giving the whole space a sterile, almost surgical feel. On the walls, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Hooks where security cameras should have been, but each one was removed, wires dangling. Like someone didn't want a record of what happened down here. Lila slowed, listening to hum of the lights, then pointed to a distant room with a window. "That's where they process their transfers," she whispered. I moved toward it cautiously, hands clenched at my sides. Through the window, the room was empty except for a metal table, a few scattered papers, and a chair lying on its side. But something else caught my eye. On the table, next to a set of zip ties, was a piece of torn fabric. Blue. Familiar. The exact shade of the jacket Miles wore the night we last spoke in person. My chest tightened. "He was here," I whispered. "Recently." Lila nodded, her face pale. "Then they move him, and they're not far ahead." Before I could respond, distant voices echoed from the far in the corridor. Footsteps, 2, maybe 3 men, paced toward us. Lila grabbed my arm. "Danny, if they find us here, they won't take us alive." The fluorescent lights flickered ominously as the voices drew closer. And in that moment, Standing in the cold belly of the city, with danger closing in from every direction, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just searching for Miles anymore. I was stepping directly into the world that swallowed him whole. The voices grew sharper as they moved closer, their footsteps echoing through the metal corridor like the ticking of a countdown I couldn't stop. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow, trying to blend into the shadows even though the harsh fluorescent lights gave us nowhere to hide. Lila grabbed my sleeve and pulled me toward a maintenance hatch halfway down the hall. Small, rusted, barely noticeable unless you knew exactly where to look. "In here," she whispered urgently, already unscrewing the bolts with a tiny multi-tool she carried like a lifeline. I crouched beside her, listening to men's voices, low, confident, discussing something about the transfer schedule and the brother. My blood turned to ice. They were talking about me. Lila yanked the panel free, revealing a cramped service duct running parallel to the corridor. "Go!" she whispered, shoving the flashlight into my hand. I slid inside first, the metal scraping against my jacket as I crawled forward. Lila crawled in behind me, pulling the panel closed just as the footsteps reached the doorway of the processing room we'd just examined. The sound was muffled through the metal, but I could make out enough to know danger was inches away. One man stopped right outside the hatch. His boots turned slightly, like he was scanning the corridor. "Boss said the brother might come looking," he muttered. "What if he already has?" Another man chuckled. "Then he won't get far. Orders are clear. If Hart shows his face anywhere in this sector, we take him down. No questions." My chest tightened. Lila touched my ankle gently, signaling me to stay still. Every muscle in my body burned from tension. But I didn't move, didn't breathe, not until the voices drifted farther down the corridor. Only when their footsteps faded into the distance did Lila tap my leg again. "Keep going," she whispered. The duct sloped downward, the air turning colder and thinner as we crawled. The metal groaned under our weight, and every noise felt painfully loud, like a shout in a cathedral. After several long minutes, the duct widened near a grated opening. I peered through the slits and felt my stomach drop. Below us, in a room lit by harsh white lights, stood four men around a map of the city pinned to a metal board. Red lines stretched across neighborhoods like veins, marking routes and drop points. One photo sat at the center of the board, a grainy shot Miles, beaten but alive, with a date scrawled across the bottom. Yesterday. Lila crawled up beside me, peeking through the grate. Her breath hitched. "That's their route map," she whispered. "The red lines, those are extraction paths." My voice came out hoarse. Where were they taking him? Lila pointed at a circle near the waterfront. "There, Sector 12. The docks." I felt something dark and heavy settle inside me. Determination edged with the kind of fear a man feels when he realizes there's only one road left, and it runs straight through hell. As I stared at the map, one of the men below tapped a different circle with his finger. "They're expecting Hart to make a move," he said. "We tighten security at the docks. Nobody gets in or out." Another man nodded. "And the brother? He'll be handled before he becomes a bigger problem." A cold shiver ran through me. These men weren't guessing. They were planning for me, moving pieces on a board I didn't even know existed. Lila touched my arm softly. "Danny, if we go to those docks, we won't be walking into a rescue mission. We'll be walking into an ambush." I looked through the grate, at the map, at the photo of my broken brother. "I know," I whispered, "but he's my family." She closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself for the path we were choosing. "Then we'd better find a way out of here," she said, "because if they catch us now, we won't make it to the surface." And in that cramped metal duct, surrounded by enemies and shadows, I realized something terrifyingly clear. Saving Miles wasn't going to require bravery. It was going to require war. We crawled deeper through the duct, the metal groaning under our weight as if the whole underground system was warning us to turn back before we crossed a line we couldn't uncross. My knees burned from scraping against the steel, and every breath felt thick and cold. But I kept moving because the image of Miles on that board, beaten, bruised, helpless, burned hotter in my chest in fear. Lila followed close behind, her breaths uneven, her hands trembling every time the duct rattled from footsteps echoing somewhere above us. After what felt like forever, the duct sloped downward again and opened onto a small maintenance shaft with a ladder leading into pitch-black darkness. "This drops into the lower level," she whispered, shining her light down the hole. "It's old, barely used. If we're lucky, there's an exit hatch near the drainage basin." I smirked bitterly. Since when has luck been on our side tonight? She almost smiled. "Fair point, but it's all we've got." I started down the ladder, each rung vibrating under my boots. The darkness below swallowed me fast, until the only thing keeping me grounded was the faint beam of Lila's flashlight overhead. When my feet hit concrete, I stepped aside to let her climb down. Down here, the air smelled damp and stale, like old stone mixed with machinery that hadn't been touched in decades. Pipes lined the walls, some dripping, some hissing faintly. Graffiti covered parts of the concrete. Old tags from kids who probably had no idea what secrets lay beneath their feet. "This place is ancient," I muttered. "City built over it and forgot it existed," Lila replied. "Makes it perfect for them." As we moved forward, our footsteps echoed into the hollow distance. I kept the flashlight low, sweeping across the floor for tripwires or sensors. The further we walked, the more uneasy I felt. Something about the silence down here didn't feel natural. It felt watched. Halfway through the tunnel, Lila grabbed my arm suddenly. I froze. Ahead of us, the beam of my flashlight landed on a metal crate shoved awkwardly against the wall. Its lid cracked open. Inside were black duffel bags stacked neatly, each marked with a small red symbol that looked like a diagonal slash through a circle. Lila inhaled sharply. "Those are theirs," she whispered. "Supply bags." I knelt, unzipping one of the duffels carefully. Inside were tactical vests, burner phones, wrist restraints, encrypted radios, and small black envelopes, each labeled with names I didn't recognize. It wasn't random. It was organized. It was a system. "These are assignments," Lila whispered, her voice shaking. "Targets, moves, disposals." I zipped the bag shut with a trembling hand. "Miles was right," I said quietly. "This isn't corruption. This is infrastructure." Before she could respond, a metallic click echoed from behind us, soft, deliberate, unmistakable. The sound of a safety being taken off. My heart stopped. We turned slowly. A silhouette emerged from the shadows at the far end of the corridor, tall and built like a wall of muscle. And when he stepped into the faint cone of our flashlight, I felt my blood turn to ice. It was the same man from Miles's house. The one with the holster, the calm voice, the trained precision. His gun was drawn, pointed directly at my chest. "You two have been very busy," he said, his voice steady, almost bored. Lila stepped in front of me instinctively. He didn't even blink. "Step aside," he said to her. "This isn't your fight." Her voice cracked but stayed firm. "It is now." His jaw twitched. "I gave your brother a chance to walk away. He refused. And now you're making the same mistake." I felt rage surge through me, hot and blinding. "Where is he?" The man raised the gun a little higher. "Alive for now. But the more you dig, the faster his clock runs out." My fists clenched. "Take me to him." He shook his head slowly. "No, Danny, I'm here to take you." The air tightened, cold and sharp, as the space between us turned into a battlefield with no room to run, no room to breathe, and nowhere left to hide. For a second that felt stretched across the whole damn night, none of us moved. The gun he held was steady, too steady, like he'd been aiming at people his entire life, and never once missed. Lila's breath hitched beside me, her fingers trembling at her sides, but she didn't move away. She stood between us like a shield carved out of fear and stubborn courage. The man's eyes locked on mine with a cold patience, the kind that made it clear he wasn't rushing this because he didn't need to. He already believed the ending was written. "You shouldn't have come down here, Danny," he said quietly, stepping closer. "Some truths don't save people. They bury them." My pulse thudded painfully against my ribs. "Then shoot me," I said, voice tight, "but you tell me where my brother's first." A humorless smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You still think you're in a position to negotiate?" Lila shifted slightly, her breath sharp. "He's not going with you," she whispered. "Not without a fight." The man sighed, annoyed, almost disappointed. I don't want to kill anyone I don't have to. Step aside, Lila. Hearing him say her name made my skin crawl. How much did he know? How long had he been watching us? She didn't move. She lifted her chin, voice shaking but stronger than before. Miles trusted him. So do I. Something in the man's expression hardened. His patience cracked. I said step aside. He took another step, the gun now inches from her chest. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I lunged, grabbing the crate beside me and hurling it toward him. It hit the floor loud enough to make the whole tunnel tremble. He reacted instantly, gun whipping toward me as he fired. The shot exploded like thunder, the bullet slamming into concrete by my shoulder, spraying dust into my eyes. Lila screamed my name, diving behind one of the support beams. I rolled across the floor, grabbing the fallen duffel bag and yanking out one of the tactical vests inside. Another shot cracked through the air, ripping through the metal panel inches from my hand. You think you can fight me? He shouted, footsteps pounding closer. You don't even know what we are. I ducked behind a rusted pipe, heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. Then tell me. I yelled back. More footsteps. Slow. Controlled. Hunting. We're the part of the system that cleans up the mess the city can't admit exists, he said. Your father found out. Your brother followed him. And now you're next in line. Hearing my father's name again hit me like a punch to the ribs. You killed him, I spat. Silence, sharp and heavy. Then he made a choice, and he paid for it. Rage flooded my chest, blinding and hot. I waited until he stepped closer, just a little, then swung the metal pipe at his arm. It connected with a sickening crack. The stairwell twisted downward in a long spiral, each step vibrating under our feet as distant machinery rumbled somewhere deep in the complex. The air changed as we descended, warmer, thicker, carrying a faint chemical smell that clung to the back of my throat like smoke after fire. Lila kept one hand on the railing, her knuckles white, her breath uneven from the combination of fear, exhaustion, and the brutal reality we were walking into. At the bottom of the stairs, we reached a narrow landing lit by a single flickering bulb. Before us stood a reinforced door, newer than the older infrastructure, painted a dull gray with a biometric lock panel glowing faintly blue. This is new, she whispered, wiping sweat from her forehead. Miles said they were expanding the underground sectors. Must have installed this in the last few months. I stepped closer, studying the panel, a fingerprint pad, a retinal scanner, a small keypad beneath it. We're not getting through this, I muttered, frustration rising like heat in my chest. But Lila crouched beside the panel, pulling the same small hacking device from her jacket. We don't need to get through it, she murmured. We just need a window. I didn't understand what she meant until she jammed 2 wires into the service port beneath the panel. Sparks flickered as the device beeped, scanning through access codes. The lock clicked once, then again, and the panel lights flickered erratically. I can scramble the system for a few seconds, she whispered quickly. When the failsafe kicks in, the door will open automatically to avoid trapping personnel inside. I nodded, muscles coiled tight as the panel buzzed louder, static humming through the air.
Then clunk. The heavy mechanism disengaged. The door cracked open an inch, a cold draft rushing through the gap. Push, Lila said. I leaned my shoulder into it. The door groaned reluctantly, then slid open enough for us to slip inside. The room beyond was enormous, a massive underground chamber filled with rows of metal crates, computer stations, and a long central table cluttered with maps, documents, and surveillance photos. Screens flickered along the walls, some showing live feeds of the streets above, others displaying news channels. But what caught my breath wasn't the equipment. It was the far wall, a glass partition. Behind it, dimly lit, barely visible, stood a series of individual holding cells. My heartbeat stumbled when I saw movement in the second one. A man sitting on the floor, head bowed, arms tied in front of him. Even from a distance, even through the glass, I knew the shape of his posture. Miles, I whispered, the name choking out of me like a prayer and a curse all at once. Lila grabbed my arm, pulling me back before I rushed forward blindly.
Wait.
There might be guards. She was right. But the surge of emotion inside me, fear, relief, rage, was so violent I could barely think. Miles was alive. Not a rumor. Not a hope. Not a ghost lurking at the edge of my memory.
Alive.
And trapped like an animal in a cage. I forced myself to breathe, to focus, to see the room instead of just the cell. Where's the guard station? I whispered. Lila pointed to a small office near the far corner, its window dark. 2, maybe 3 inside, she said. If we're lucky, one's asleep. And if we're not, she swallowed. They're armed, and they'll kill on sight. I stepped behind a stack of crates, pulling Lila with me. The air vibrated slightly, footsteps approaching from the hallway behind us. Not rushed, not alarmed, just routine. 1 man, maybe 2. My pulse quickened. We didn't have much time. I leaned close to Lila, whispering, "We get to the cells. We get Miles. And then we find another exit." She nodded, though fear flickered in her eyes. "Danny, if they catch us here, they won't." I wasn't sure if I was convincing her or myself. Then I felt it, this tight, electric certainty pulsing through my body. Everything we'd been running from, every shadow, every danger, every truth, they all pointed to this room. To this moment. To my brother sitting alone behind that glass wall. I tightened my jaw. "We end this," I whispered. And we moved along the rows of crates like shadows slipping between pillars, every breath measured, every step deliberate. The chamber stretched wider than I expected, a hollowed-out vault humming with the low throb of servers and ventilation fans buried deep in the walls. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make the room feel alive, like it was breathing with us, watching us. My eyes stayed locked on the glass partition where Miles sat hunched in that cell, his head drooping forward, his shoulders slack. He hadn't moved since I first spotted him. A sick panic gnawed at me. Was he unconscious? Or worse? Lila reached the corner first, crouching behind a tall locker unit while I pressed myself against a metal column. We peeked out just as a figure emerged from the corridor. 1 guard, just like we'd heard, walking lazily with a clipboard tucked under his arm. He paused near the central table, flipping through papers, oblivious to how close danger creeped around him. Lila whispered, "We have maybe 10 seconds before he circles back toward the cells." I nodded and scanned the room for options. The guard station in the corner had a glass window darkened from the inside, but the faint outline of 2 figures suggested more men sat behind it, maybe relaxed, maybe armed. Definitely trouble. "We need a distraction," I breathed. Lila's lips tightened as she pulled a small metal canister from her jacket, a smoke charge, the kind used by undercover teams to create temporary visual cover. "Miles gave me one," she whispered. "Said to use it only when there's no other choice." I stared at the canister, heat rising in my chest. "This qualifies." She nodded, pulling the pin. I took a deep breath. "Throw it far. Away from the cells." She flicked her wrist and sent the canister rolling across the floor toward the machinery on the opposite side. It hissed once before erupting into a thick plume of gray smoke that billowed upward in swirling waves. The guard spun around, startled, dropping his clipboard. "What the?" he shouted, rushing toward the source of the smoke. Inside the station, the silhouettes jerked to life, alarms blaring faintly as they scrambled for weapons. "Move," I hissed. Lila and I darted toward the glass partition, staying low beneath the smoke line. The closer I got, the more my chest tightened. Miles looked smaller, thinner, his face bruised and pale. I reached the access panel beside the cell, a biometric lock similar to the door we'd bypassed earlier. Lila shoved her device into the port, fingers trembling as she scrambled to override it. Behind us, shouts erupted, bootsteps pounding against the concrete as the guards burst through the smoke. "Hurry," I whispered, gripping the panel so hard my knuckles whitened. Lila's device beeped once, twice, then flashed red. "Damn it. They upgraded the encryption," she hissed. Panic surged through me. The guards were getting closer, their silhouettes cutting through the thinning smoke. I slammed my fist against the panel, rage shaking through me. "Lila, we need another way." She typed furiously, sweat streaking down her temple. "I'm trying. I just need..." Boom. The glass behind us trembled as a bullet slammed into the wall a foot away. Another guard shouted, "There, by the cells." Lila screamed as the panels sparked violently, then suddenly, mercifully, turned green. The cell door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. I didn't wait. I rushed inside, dropping to my knees beside Miles. Hey, kid," I whispered, lifting his head. His eyes fluttered open, barely focusing. "Danny," he breathed, voice broken and small. "I knew you'd come." I swallowed hard, pulling him into my arms, the weight of his suffering crashing into me like a tidal wave. Lila appeared behind us, eyes wild. "Danny, we have to move. They're here." Miles sagged against me, whispering through cracked lips, "They're not done. Danny, they're coming." The footsteps thundered closer, weapons clattering, voices shouting orders. I tightened my grip on him and rose slowly, fury burning hotter than fear. "Then let them," I whispered, "because I'm not leaving without you."
The moment I lifted Miles into my arms, the whole chamber erupted into chaos. Boots hammered against the concrete, metal scraped. Voices barked orders, and the sharp click of rifles charging filled the air like a countdown to death. Lila grabbed the door frame, her chest heaving as she tried to spot an exit through the thinning smoke. "Danny, they're flanking us," she shouted. Miles clung weakly to my shirt, his breath warm but fragile against my neck. His skin felt cold, like the warmth had been drained from him long before we arrived. "Stay with me, all right?" I whispered, forcing steadiness into my voice even though panic clawed at the edges. He didn't answer, just nodded faintly, his eyes slipping in and out of focus. Behind us, bullets tore through the air, shattering a light panel in a burst of sparks that rained down on the floor. The guard were closing in fast, tightening a noose around us. "We need cover," I yelled. Lila scanned the room, then pointed to a crate stack near the south wall. "Behind there, hurry." We sprinted toward it, my arms tightening around Miles as I shielded him from the gunfire echoing across the chamber. A bullet grazed the floor by my foot, sending a shower of concrete chips into my leg. Pain flared, sharp and hot, but I forced myself forward. Lila slid behind the crates first, pulling me beside her. The crates shook as shots struck the other side, each impact vibrating through the wood. "We can't stay here," she gasped. "They'll pin us down." I swallowed hard, looking around for any possible escape route. My eyes landed on a metal ladder, leading to a narrow walkway above the chamber, half hidden by shadows. "There," I whispered. "If we can get up there, we might lose them in the maze above." Lila followed my gaze. "It's risky, but everything else is suicide." She took a deep breath, then pulled a small flash pellet from her pocket. Her last one. "I throw this. You run to the ladder with Miles. I'll cover you." I looked at her sharply. "No, we stay together." She met my eyes with a look that cut straight through the noise, the gunfire, the panic. "Danny, your brother needs you more than I do. If we don't make it up there, everything you went through, all of this, was for nothing." Before I could argue, she pulled the pin. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the pellet activated. "Go!" she whispered, voice trembling. "Run." The pellet exploded in a blinding flash. White light swallowing the chamber, the guards shouting in confusion as they staggered backward. I lunged from behind the crates, practically carrying Miles as I sprinted toward the ladder. Every step felt like running through fire. My breath tore from my lungs, my heart pounding like a war drum. Behind me, gunfire resumed, wild, disoriented shots hitting walls, crates, floor. Lila's voice rang out through the haze. "Danny, move!" I reached the ladder and shoved Miles upward, forcing his hands onto the rungs. "Climb," I whispered urgently. "I got you." He tried, his body shaking with every step, but he climbed, inch by inch, step by painful step. I stayed right behind him, one hand on his back, pushing him upward, refusing to let him fall. Halfway up, a bullet slammed into the metal beside my head, sending a vibrating shock through the ladder. I clenched my teeth and climbed faster. Below us, shadows converged. Boots thundered. Voices grew sharper. And then I heard Lila scream. A raw, tearing sound that ripped through the chamber and straight into my bones. I twisted just enough to see her fall to the ground as one of the guards tackled her, dragging her back into the smoke. "Lila!" I shouted, my voice cracking with panic. She looked up at me, eyes wide with pain and something like peace. "Go!" she cried, struggling beneath the guard. "Save him." And then the guard slammed her back, disappearing with her into the darkness. Rage surged through me, hot and uncontrollable, but Miles slipped on a rung above me, nearly falling. I caught him, forcing myself to focus. He came first. He had to. I dragged him up the last few feet until we reached the walkway, collapsing beside him, both of us gasping for breath. Below us, the guards swarmed, their shouts echoing. And somewhere in that chaos, Lila's voice faded. Swallowed by the storm, we were now too deep to escape. The walkway trembled beneath us as I dragged Miles farther down the narrow metal platform, his weight sagging heavily against my shoulder. My breath came in ragged bursts, each inhale sharp enough to sting. Below us, the chamber swarmed with guards moving like dark tides in and out of smoke, their radios crackling with clipped orders. Every few seconds, a flashlight beam sliced across the floor, searching for movement, sweeping the walls, growing closer to the ladder we'd just escaped. My mind churned, Lila's scream still echoing like a knife lodged under my ribs. I want to go back for her, tear through every guard until I found her, but Miles swayed again, his knees buckling. He was barely conscious, his skin cold and clammy. "Stay with me, man," I whispered, tightening my grip around his waist. His eyelids fluttered, his voice a hoarse rasp. "You shouldn't have come." I huffed a bitter breath. "Yeah, well, I'm not big on listening." He gave a faint, broken laugh, then winced from pain. The walkway turned sharply, leading to another door, unmarked, rusted, with a single red emergency light glowing above it. I shoved it open and pulled Miles inside. The room beyond was small, dim. A storage area packed with old machinery, spare pipes, dusty control panels. But most importantly, it was empty, save for the moment. I lowered Miles gently onto a crate, my hand shaking as I checked his wrists, his face, every bruise and cut. His breathing was shallow, but steady. "What did they do to you?" I murmured. His eyes darted away. "Doesn't matter. You need to leave me, Danny." My jaw tightened. "Not happening." He swallowed hard, voice trembling. "They're not stopping. They won't stop. Not until they erase everything I found." I knelt in front of him, gripping his shoulders gently. "Then tell me what you found." He hesitated, glancing at the shadows crawling across the walls as the guards searched the chamber outside. Finally, he whispered, "Dad knew before he died. He warned me." My breath caught in my throat. "Warned you about what?" Miles leaned forward just enough for me to hear him. "A ledger, hidden accounts, payments to the off-books units. Evidence that the people running this weren't criminals. They were officials, high level, people whose names would burn the whole city down if they got out." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Where is it?" "With her." His voice cracked. "With Lila." The words hit me like ice water. Lila wasn't just helping him. She was carrying the thing they were willing to kill for. The thing that shattered their facade of control. The thing that could expose their entire operation. And now she was somewhere down there, surrounded by armed men who wouldn't hesitate to finish what they started. Miles grabbed my sleeve weakly. "Danny, listen to me. Don't go back down there. They'll kill you." I met his exhausted eyes, seeing fear, guilt, and something deeper, love, the kind he never said out loud. "I'm not letting her die," I whispered. He shook his head, desperation roughening his voice. "You don't understand. They don't take prisoners. If she still has the ledger, they'll extract it any way they can. And if she doesn't," he trailed off, unable to say it. Anger flared through me, hot and reckless. "Then I'm getting it back." A sudden clang echoed outside the doorway, distant but approaching. The guards were moving upward now, fanning through the upper levels. Miles stiffened. "They're coming." I stood, scanning the room. A second door sat on the opposite wall, narrow, rust-streaked, with a faded sign reading, "Upper Maintenance Access. Can you walk?" I asked. He tried shifting his weight and nearly collapsed. I caught him, pulling his arm over my shoulders again. "I'll take that as a no." He exhaled weakly. "Danny, save your breath," I said, pulling him toward the door, "because I'm not losing you, and I'm not losing her." He let out a shaky breath that sounded almost like surrender. I kicked the access door open. The cold air hit us like a slap as we stepped into another narrow passage, the hum of the facility vibrating beneath our feet. Behind us, radios crackled, voices echoed, boots thundered. The hunt was climbing. As I hauled Miles deeper into the shadows, one truth settled in my chest like a spark igniting a fuse. If I wanted to save him and Lila, I couldn't keep running. I had to turn around and fight. The maintenance passage stretched ahead like a throat carved into bones of the city, narrow and dim, lit only by a few dying bulbs that flickered like they were struggling to stay alive. I half-carried Miles to the corridor, his weight dragging against me with every step. His breathing sounded ragged, shallow, like each inhale cost him more strength than he had left. The deeper we went, the more the air shifted, less industrial, more earthy, carrying the distant smell of damp stone and cold iron. Whatever this section of the facility was, it hadn't been used for regular operations in a long time, which meant fewer guards and fewer escape routes. "Danny," Miles whispered, his voice barely there, "you need to lead me somewhere safe and go." I tightened my grip on his waist. "Stop saying that. I'm not leaving you." He coughed, pain twisting across his bruised face. "Then we're both dead." "Not if I can help it." But even as I said it, a knot tightened in my chest. Because the truth was, Miles wasn't wrong. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have weapons. I didn't have Lila. All I had was desperation and a stubborn refusal to lose anyone else I loved. We reached another junction where the passage split into two dark tunnels. A faint draft drifted from the left, carrying a metallic echo like distant chains rattling against stone. From the right came a low hum, steady, electrical machinery. I scanned both paths, listening for voices or footsteps, but the silence pressed against my ears. "Which way?" I whispered. "You worked with Lila. You know this place better than I do." Miles frowned, eyes unfocused. "Try to remember." They brought me in through a loading corridor below the generators. "That hum," he pointed weakly to the right. "It's the direction they'd use to move personnel." "Then we go right." Just as I shifted him toward the tunnel, a sharp crack echoed behind us. A door slamming opened somewhere in the passage we just left. Miles stiffened. I turned, heart pounding, listening. Voices, several. Boots scraping. Flashlight beams scattering across metal. They were close. Too close. "Move," I whispered, dragging Miles into the right-hand tunnel. The hum grew louder as we hurried down the dark corridor, the walls vibrating faintly with the rhythm of machinery deep in the complex. The air warmed, heavy with the scent of oil and heated metal. The tunnel widened into a service room with a grated floor suspended above a maze of pipes. In the center stood a massive generator, its pistons pumping slowly, rattling the entire room. But what stopped me wasn't the machine. It was the door on the far wall, reinforced, heavy, and spattered with fresh streaks of something dark. Blood. Miles's grip tightened on my arm. "This is where they brought some of the others," he whispered, voice trembling. "Danny, we shouldn't be here." I swallowed hard, fighting back a wave of dread. We need to get above ground. And if the guards are behind us, there's no turning back. The generator hissed, releasing a cloud of steam that rolled across the grated floor like fog. The moment it cleared, I saw something glint beside the door, a key card lying half hidden in the grime. I lunged for it, almost slipping on the grate. The key card was smeared with blood and dirt, but intact. "This might get us through," I said, lifting it. Miles didn't answer. His knees buckled, and he collapsed against me, eyes rolling back for a moment. "Miles!" I caught him just before he hit the floor. His breath came in weak, shallow bursts. He was fading, fast. Voices echoed in the tunnel behind us. Clearer now. "They came this way. Check the generator room." My pulse jumped. I lifted Miles again, propping him against the generator, as I slid the key card to the panel beside the reinforced door. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked. The door shifted open. I dragged Miles through the doorway just as flashlights streaked across the walls behind us. One guard shouted, "They're in the chamber." I shut the door and threw the manual bolt across it. Not much protection. Seconds at best. The room we had entered stretched into a long stone corridor lit by emergency lights, the walls sweating moisture, the floor cold under my boots. It looked older than the rest of the facility, older than everything we'd seen so far, like something built before the city even existed. Miles clutched my sleeve, his voice barely a whisper. "Danny, this place, it's where they take the ones who don't come back." My heart froze. Behind us, fists slammed against the door. Metal groaned. Screws strained. The guard were seconds from breaking through. I tightened my grip on Miles, my breath steadying into something cold, sharp, determined. "Then we don't stay," I whispered. "We keep going." And as I pulled him deeper into the ancient corridor, the door behind us shuddered under the force of the men trying to break it down, and I realized with chilling certainty we had run out of safe places. From here on out, it was either fight our way out or disappear like everyone else who'd been dragged into these tunnels. The corridor tightened around us like a throat carved from stone, each breath colder than the last, as if the air hadn't been disturbed in years. I hauled Miles forward, his weight dragging against me, his boots scraping weakly along the floor. Behind us, the reinforced door shuddered violently under repeated blows, each impact echoing down the passage like the heartbeat of some monster waking from a decades-long sleep. The emergency lights flickered overhead, casting long, distorted shadows that stretched and twisted along the damp walls. "Danny," Miles murmured, barely conscious. "You should have left me." I clenched my jaw, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. Not happening. Ever. The passage sloped downward, revealing a wider chamber ahead. An underground vault so old the stones looked hand-carved, etched with cracks that spiderwebbed in every direction. Rusted metal rings lined the walls, some still holding torn ropes or broken restraints. The sight made my stomach twist. "What the hell is this place?" I whispered. Miles blinked slowly, his voice slurring. Dad found references, old holding tunnels, used before the new city grid. They repurposed them. Repurposed. The words soured in my mouth. A sudden crash boomed behind us. The door finally surrendering to the force of the guards. Voices poured into the tunnels, sharp and vicious. "They're down here. Move." My pulse spiked. I dragged Miles faster toward the far end of the chamber, where a narrow metal staircase climbed upward along the wall, leading to another platform carved into stone. "Up there," I urged. "Come on." We reached the base of the stairs just as a flashlight beam sliced across the chamber behind us. "Contact." "I see them." Bullets ripped through the air, slamming into the stone and spraying dust across my back. I shielded Miles with my body, pushing him onto the first step. "Climb," I ordered. "Don't stop." His legs trembled violently, but he moved, gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to life. I followed closely behind, each step vibrating with the thunder of approaching footsteps. Halfway up, the stone beside my shoulder exploded under a bullet. I stumbled, catching myself on the railing as Miles gasped in fear above me. "Keep going," I yelled. The guards fanned into the chamber below, their lights flashing upward, guns raised. Another shot fired, ricocheting off the metal railing. My chest tightened. We weren't going to make it. Not like this. Then I saw it. At the top of the staircase, a rusted access hatch hung loosely on its hinges, the padlock broken and lying on the floor, as if someone had forced their way through recently. Lila, it had to be her. A surge of hope burst through me. "Miles, faster." He pushed himself, groaning with each step, but he climbed. When we reached the platform, I grabbed the hatch and shoved it upward. It screeched open, revealing another tunnel, narrower, darker, but leading somewhere. Anywhere was better than here. I helped Miles through the hatch just as the guards reached the base of the stairs below us. "Stop," one of them shouted. "Don't take another step." A beam of light locked onto me. Guns raised. Fingers tightened on triggers. Miles reached down, grabbing my wrist weakly. "Danny, come on." I hauled myself up into the tunnel, pulling the hatch behind us. Bullets slammed into it instantly, ringing through the metal like hammer strikes. "Move," I urged, pushing Miles forward. The tunnel sloped upward, the faintest hint of fresh air drifting through the cracks in the stone. A way out. Maybe. The sound of footsteps thundered below as the guards swarmed the stairwell, their shouts echoing through the darkness. "They're heading to the north shaft. Cut them off." My heart staggered. They knew the tunnels better than we did. They were faster, stronger, armed, and closing in. But through the darkness ahead, I saw something. A faint blue glow, cold and steady. A vent, an exit, a chance. I gripped Miles harder, breath ragged. "Almost there," I whispered. "Don't quit on me now." His voice came out barely a breath. "Danny, they're not letting us out alive." I swallowed hard, pushing forward anyway. "Then we'll force them." I whispered. "We're not done. Not yet." And together, bleeding, shaking, hunted from every side, we crawled toward that faint blue glow like it was the last light left in the world. The faint blue glow ahead felt impossibly distant, like a promise whispered through miles of stone, but it pulled us forward with every scrap of strength we had left. The tunnel walls tightened around us, rough stone scraping my shoulders as I dragged Miles along, his weight slumping heavier with every step. His breathing grew shallow, ragged, each inhale a fragile thread pulling him back from the edge. "Stay with me," I whispered, my voice cracking. "We're close, Miles. I swear we're close." He didn't answer, but his fingers curled weakly into the fabric of my jacket, a small, desperate anchor. Behind us, the echo of boots clattered across stone, dozens of them, disciplined and coordinated, closing like a collapsing net. Their radios crackled with sharp commands, voices bouncing off the walls. "North shaft entrance, seal it." "Team 2, flank the upper ridge." "Don't let the Hart brothers reach the surface." My stomach twisted. They weren't just chasing us now. They were surrounding us. The tunnel sloped upward sharply, forcing us to climb on all fours. Every movement sent pain shooting up my arms, but I pushed through it, dragging Miles behind me. The blue glow widened until I realized it wasn't just light. It was moonlight. Cold, pale moonlight, leaking through a metal grate at the end of the tunnel. Hope flared in my chest, so hard it hurt. "Miles, we made it," I whispered. A bullet cracked through the tunnel, smashing into the stone inches from my hand. Pebbles stung my face. Another shot followed, the muzzle flash illuminating the tunnel behind us. They had reached the bend. The chase was over. They had line of sight. "Go," I hissed, shoving Miles toward the grate. "Move." I reached the end of the tunnel, grabbed the metal bars, and pushed. They didn't budge. Rusted, sealed, or maybe welded shut decades ago when the city forgot these passages ever existed. I slammed my shoulder into it again and again, metal groaning, but refusing to give. Come on, come on." Miles tried to help, but he collapsed, his body too weak to do more than breathe. Another bullet whistled past my ear, ricocheting off the grate. The guard were coming fast, shouting commands as their footsteps thundered closer. Panic clawed at my throat, cold and sharp. If the grate didn't open, we were dead right here. Miles, me, everything we fought for ending in a forgotten tunnel beneath a city that would never know our names. I roared through clenched teeth and slammed into the grate one last time. This time, something shifted. A bolt snapped. The metal hinge cracked. Moonlight widened. "Danny!" Miles gasped weakly. "Behind you?" I spun just as the first guard rounded the corner, his rifle raised, flashlight blinding me. No time to think. No time to breathe. I grabbed a loose brick from the tunnel floor and hurled it as hard as I could. The brick smashed into his wrist, sending his shot wild. He stumbled back. I lunged for the grate and kicked it with everything I had left. The metal tore free, swinging open with a shriek that echoed across the night. Cold air blasted into the tunnel, sharp and clean, like a second chance. Go! I grabbed Miles, hauling him toward the opening. We climbed out onto a rocky embankment overlooking a storm drain that spilled out into a ravine beyond the city limits. Above us, the moon floated high and pale, a cold witness to everything we'd survived. But survival wasn't guaranteed, not yet, because behind us, boots pounded louder, closer, angrier, and as I pulled Miles into the open air, the truth settled in my chest like a stone. We weren't escaping. Not tonight. We were making our final stand. The night opened around us like a cold breath as I hauled Miles out onto the rocky embankment, the city lights flickering faintly in the distance like a world we no longer belonged to. The moon hung white and heavy above us, washing the ravine in silver tones that made everything feel both too real and too unreal, like we'd stumbled into some forgotten edge of the world. Miles sagged against my shoulder, barely conscious, his pulse weak, his skin cold. "Danny," he whispered, voice barely holding on. You can leave me. You have to." I shook my head, tightening my grip around him. That's not happening. Not now. Not ever. But inside, fear churned like wildfire, because I didn't know how much longer he could last. The grate clanged behind us, metal buckling as the first boot slammed against it. Flashlights cut through the darkness, inside the tunnel like spears of white fire. Shouts erupted, commands, orders, the kind of coordinated noise you hear when men are preparing to kill. "They're here!" someone shouted from inside. "Move! They're outside!" I pulled Miles along the slope, feet slipping on loose gravel, each step sending tiny stones skittering into the ravine. The slope ended at a drop, 20, maybe 30 feet down into a shallow, rushing creek. The water glinted under the moon like a ribbon of cold steel. Behind us, the soldiers poured out of the tunnel like a black wave, rifles raised, eyes locked on us with cold precision. "Danny," Miles murmured, barely audible, "don't let them take us." I looked at the drop, looked at the number of soldiers, looked at the cliff, looked at my brother, broken, shaking, half-conscious in my arms. It felt like time slowed to a crawl. One soldier stepped forward, raising a megaphone. "Daniel Hart," he called, his voice artificial and hollow through the speaker. "Surrender now. You've reached a dead end. You cannot escape." His light found us on the slope, freezing us in a harsh white beam. I shielded Miles with my body, shouting back, "He needs a medic. He's dying." The man didn't flinch. "Surrender, and we'll handle him. Resist, and you both disappear tonight. Those are your only choices." Miles shuddered weakly, clutching my arm. "No," he whispered. "No, Danny, don't let them." I lowered my head, jaw trembling, a storm of emotion tearing through me. Fear, rage, exhaustion, love, all burning inside like lightning trapped under my ribs. They wanted us dead. They wanted us erased. They wanted this story buried with every other soul they dragged into the dark. But they'd underestimated something. Something simple, something stupid, something stubborn. I didn't know how to quit. I looked at the ravine, looked at the soldiers raising their rifles, and then I whispered into Miles's ear, "Hold on to me." He tightened his weak fingers around my jacket. Behind us, the commander shouted, "Last warning, stand down." I tightened my grip on my brother, felt the tremble of his breath, felt the pounding of my own heart, felt the knife edge of the decision in front of us, and then, without giving myself time to hesitate, I stepped backward off the edge. The world dropped out from under us. Cold wind roared past my ears. Miles gasped, clutching me harder. And for a single, suspended moment, we weren't running or fighting or dying. We were just falling, together, into a darkness the soldiers couldn't control. The river hit us like a punch, icy and violent, dragging us under. I kicked upward, pulling Miles with me, breaking the surface in a rush of air and pain. Bullets tore into the water behind us, but the current yanked us away, down the ravine out of sight. The last thing I saw as the current pulled us into black were those soldiers crowding the edge of the cliff, their lights scanning the water desperately, searching for bodies that the river refused to give them. Miles gasped weakly against my shoulder. "Danny, are we safe?" I held him close, the cold numbing everything but the fire in my chest. "Not yet," I whispered, "but we're alive. And tomorrow we bring the truth into the light." And as the river carried us deeper into the night, I knew this wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of a war we were finally ready to fight.